What's up, Jarl? What's up, Zieglim? All right. Gotta get all my ducks in a row here. Where did I put? Hello, Trucker Moto. Stretch. What did I do? Sorry, 1 second. Broke something. Twitch. JD plays. Okay, I think we are getting there. JD's getting all his stuff set up. Getting his Twitch and YouTube stream going. Just give you guys some nice chill music while you wait. Okay, I think I've got everything ready. We'll see. And we'll see if we have any technical difficulties. Hopefully everything works okay. Dave, I did have a nice weekend, or am having a nice weekend. What about you? Oh, it looks like there's a little bit of a shadow green appearing. fix that. Chroma key needs to be more aggressive. There we go. A meh weekend? Sorry to hear that. Okay. I am looking forward to a vacation here in a week, which will be nice. So, I feel like the week before vacation is always kind of, I don't know, the worst, the best. The anticipation's great, but you're like, I just want to be there already. So yeah, I think that's how it always feels a little bit. And then there's always the making sure you have everything ready and all that. But it's not going to be that hard to pack. It's just the beach, you know, sunscreen, swimsuit. What else do you need? You can buy beer there. Should work out. Excuse me, Twitch? Unable to pin the message. Well, I'm your boss. You can't tell me unable to pin the message. There we go. I think I might have gotten the time a little wrong. I think he had initially said 2:30, so, or I should say 13 minutes from now. So when I said it would be 17 minutes ago, I think I was half an hour early. So we just get to hang out for a few more minutes and think about all the fun things we're going to talk about today, like Factorio Friday Facts 404. 404 facts not found. Multi-stream? What is that? Oh, cool. Does it combine the chats? How does it do chat? Can you show both at once? Oh, you select. Can you show both? Oh, you can do a side-by-side with the chat underneath. So interesting. Never seen this before. Thanks for linking that. I have too many windows open. I really need a third monitor, don't I? Okay, there's that. ready to go. Boom. Should probably move me over when I do that. Oop, wrong thing.
I haven't added myself a note. Uploads. All right. So I am starting an hour earlier, an hour later, an hour on time. I'm not sure. I'm not
What's
sure.
up, Rayclaw?
But,
all right, looks like
where are we?
JD is introing.
How we call rants nowadays? Yes, this is going to be the Daily Rant Podcast with me, JD. What could go wrong? Maxim, greetings. Aaron Snowshow. No Decker can follow sound on follow. And we can follow. Oh, yeah, and fight for the
Yeah, exactly.
Fright Rider did. Here we go. Turn that down. Turn that on.
Hello, my friend.
There we go.
Stay a while and listen.
There we go. Stay well. Listen. Aaron Fright Rider. Who else do we have? We have Thanks Chat. We have me ending the stream because I broke it. Yeah, Jenny bandwidth. And Twitch is broken. Cool. Rubblesman Art the being first, yeah. YouTube's only 2 seconds behind. Twitch is getting better. Yeah, it was 2 seconds for me yesterday.
Yes, Dave, I am aware. I'm just keeping it on so we can
don't wake the kitten. Yeah, please don't wake the kitten.
stay caught up with what's going on.
All right, how you doing? Thanks, chat. Dramatic Nutter, Lil, Potter, Snowser, Maxim, Rubbles off to Newton Kingdom. The truck is here as well. Takabear again, Eisenhorn again, Pellet Guy.
All right. So today we're going to be talking about some Factorial Friday facts, and then we'll get into Captain of Industry, because they've got a huge update coming out in like a week, less than a week. Yeah, it's on Friday. So that's going to be really exciting. I'm actually planning on doing a playthrough. I'm not sure where we're going to fit it in. Probably won't start. Well, definitely won't start till after vacation. And then, you know, there's Pinedons to deal with. So we'll see when we can have time for Captain of Industry. But the goal is to get further than I didn't get super far last time. I played a decent amount, but I was only 10 hours or so. So I'm excited to get further than that because the game has a lot to offer. There's some really cool stuff. yeah, we're not finishing Pinedons by Friday. That is quite certain. Quite certain. I mean, the thing about Pinedons is it's such a marathon that really any reason you have to help yourself get further is worth it. So if it's like, or what am I trying to say? Like, you should always listen to yourself starting to feel burned out with something like Pinedons, because you know, if you're starting to feel a little burnt out, then that means you're not gonna make it. So my goal is to take it slow, and if we start to get a little bored or burnt out, play a different game, potentially even play. The hard part is I really struggle with playing parallel Factorio runs. It's one thing to play a different game entirely, but playing, you know, one mod pack at the same time as another mod pack, I think feels really difficult. So I'm not sure if I could do that. Even recently doing a little bit of Ultra Cube when I was doing the freight forwarding. Speaking of Ultra Cube, am I gonna get back to Ultra Cube? I'm not sure. I'm just not feeling it. I'm gonna be honest. It's such a cool mod, and I do want to play it. I'm just not feeling the. I don't know. I'd rather just play Pyanodons right now. So that's kind of what I'm saying with parallel runs. I think it was more interesting to play. Whatchamacallit? It was more interesting to play Ultra Cube when I was in freight forwarding because I had already been in freight forwarding for a long time, and I think I was starting to get a little bored of freight forwarding. We were kind of in the last, you know, stretch there, getting towards the end, and I was just like, yeah, I think I'm ready for a change. And so that, I think Ultra Cube was fun because it was something fresh and new, and freight forwarding was a bit less fresh and new at that point, especially because I was kind of just trying to limp over the finish line. And so it was like, let's just do what we have to do to finish this. But at this point now, Pyanodons has all sorts of new exciting things, and I don't really feel like playing Ultra Cube, I think, because of that. Because there's just as many new things to do in Pyanodons. So you know what? I'm gonna get some more water real quick. I will be right back. There we go. That was weird. I didn't think the button was flashing, but I was muted. That I was. I think. There we go. This little thing hit the mute button, I think is what happened.
My next map might heavily feature trash.
How's everybody doing? What are you guys up to today? Just hanging out? Do anything interesting? The weather good? Terrible? We had great weather yesterday, and then today is a little less great. Surviving? That's good. Better than not surviving. Not quite thriving, though, is tough. I get that. I mean, since we're waiting. Why don't I do this? Since we're just sitting here doing nothing, might as well get a couple things built, right? Or something. I don't know. What can you accomplish in Pyanodons in 0 to 10 minutes? Nothing? Probably nothing. Yeah, I'm waiting for JD. He said between 2:30 and 2:45 my time. So we should see him any minute now. And I had originally misinterpreted his message. So that was my bad. Okay, let's figure out why the bots aren't building these. Because that... Oh, we already know why the bots aren't building these. That's what we're fixing in the next episode of Pyanodons. So we'll be fixing that right now because I want to do that on the official video. What else needs to be improved? You can start the game and let the factory run itself. I mean, we do need to build up lots of random things, so that's not the worst idea, actually. Not the worst idea. At least, Dave, I think I'm waiting for JD. Are you listening to his stream? Is he saying things that makes it sound like he's waiting for me? I did ping him in Discord, and I said I'm ready whenever he is, so... Maybe I can link to... Can you link a channel? No. I don't think I can. Oh, yeah, there's a link. So hot air is something I know we need more of, that we haven't really done a great job with, but did I switch around? Did we say we didn't need to switch around the Petri dishes? I'm trying to remember what we did about the old... No, it was the glassware. That's what we did, yeah. We said it wasn't quite worth it for Petri dishes yet, I think. We can just ride the copper belt, see where it takes us. All right, I'm gonna turn off the music now, just so that's one less thing to do later. And then what's JD up to right now? Is he still talking about COI stuff? He has to wake up. It is 4 a.m. for him. Yeah, I am well aware of that, Dave. I'm well aware that our hot air sucks. It does not blow hot air as it should. It sucks hot air.
Resources you can put on a map and resources you can dump. So technically you could put...
I probably shouldn't have his audio on my stream right now if you guys are watching both streams, then you're gonna get this horrible echo.
Like quartz and
whatever.
Quartz crushed?
You can mute me.
Because quartz crushed is something that you can put down? Yeah. Gold...
Apparently there was a dev stream for Captain of Industry.
I like a gold bridge to my profile and
showing the map editor.
Yes. So, Krydax podcast. Today, special guest. In the future, maybe, possibly, I co-host it with him. I think he made gold dust roads. Yeah, there's one type of gold. Import gold ore and dump it. Mod to be building out of gold. There is a couple of...
Alright, sounds like he'll be here soon. Doubled audio is our problem. That's true. That's true. I should just put it on you guys. How much CDNA do we have? Alright, I probably don't have much more time to do this. I need to focus on podcast things. We have like no CD. Wait. That shouldn't be a thing. Did it? Why are we out of moss genes? That actually maybe makes sense. Because we're using up science. No, Mark, we're just screwing around, waiting. Okay, we are podcasting. Podcasting. And we'll talk about the Factorio Friday facts. Do a mod spotlight. All the good stuff. Zeglim, is Hot Air 3 just like one more tier of hotter bricks? Is that right? Yeah, we're the same thing. Makes sense. But then you get more hot air out of each brick. Each brick. Yeah, it uses some weird gases if I'm remembering correctly. IIRC. Oh, look. He just pulled up my stream.
G'day, mate.
See here? Hold on.
No reaction. Do you unmute?
Hello? Hello? I hear you.
There he goes. Yeah, I'm muted.
How's it going, JD?
All right. See, this is why I said in a server. That way I can bring down your volume just a little bit.
Yeah. Let's see. Where do you click that to change the
Right.
volume?
Name.
Where?
And then use the volume. Because let me guess, I'm way too loud, right?
Actually, you're pretty good. Oh, there it is.
Wow.
User volume. We'll see what the viewers say, but I think we're at a pretty similar volume.
I don't know. I'm always loud. Insane that is 5:30 in the morning.
I'm impressed that you're even awake. You say it's 5:30 for you? 5:40?
Yeah, 5:30 a.m. 5:40 a.m.
Oh my gosh, you're an early riser. I can't get up before 8 unless I'm really going for it.
I used to start streaming at 9 p.m. and then I'd accidentally stream through till 5, 4, 5, 6 a.m., 8 a.m. in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And that I found was a problem because then I'd sleep till midday or 2 o'clock and then I'd get up and not get much done and then I'd stream again. So I decided to change that. Yeah, chat's corrected me. 9 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Wow.
Yeah, that's about right.
That's impressive.
So I changed that. So now I go to bed at 8 o'clock in the evenings, in theory. It was 10:30 last night. And then I get up at 4 to start at 5. It used to be getting up at 3 to start at 4.
Yeah, I mean, that's a disciplined schedule right there.
Yeah, 6 hours worth of sleep is not enough.
Not enough.
8 a.m. if Jenny didn't realize sometimes it was 8 or 9 a.m. Yep, see?
Mm-hmm.
Chat's the first one to dob me in.
All right, well, I think technically everything's rolling, right? So are you ready to jump into the podcast, or do you need a couple minutes still?
Sure, I meant to find you. You gave me notes. Like, he's giving me homework. This is the worst podcast ever.
Yeah, right? I know. So unnecessarily organized, right?
He's both organized and also gives me homework to do.
I didn't give you homework. I just asked you if there was anything any notes you had. I did the homework.
Oh, he's like, there are show notes, and I follow the script, but don't really follow the script. And remember when DSP came out and you streamed for 12 hours a day for 5 to 7 days straight? Oh yeah. He's a teacher. Homework is second nature. No, you're meant to give that to the students. You're not meant to bring that home.
Exactly. Yeah, no homework for the guests.
It's fine. Yeah, I'm good to go.
Okay, sweet. Well, I'm gonna get started recording here, and then I'll do the intro, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Cool.
So, hello everyone, and welcome to The Factory Must Grow, episode 3. Joining us on the line today, all the way from the land down under, is JD Plays. JD, how you doing today?
All right. How you doing, mate?
Man, so what time is it for you right now? It's 2:40 p.m. for me.
5:40 a.m.
That's absurd. So yeah, time difference is pretty huge with Australia and US times, but we managed to make it work. JD's an early riser.
Or early riser or late sleeper. Yeah, one or the other.
Exactly. Sometimes they're the same thing, right? Depending on how late you go. So today on the cast, we will be starting with another mod spotlight. We'll talk about the new Factorial Friday facts, and then we're going to talk quite a bit about Captain of Industry because there's a update 2 coming out here in less than a week now, and that's pretty exciting. Captain of Industry is a really well done game, and I'm excited to hear some of JD's takes on that because he has a lot more playtime in that than I do. So we'll be excited to hear some of his experience. The first thing we're going to do is the mod spotlight. And today was recommended by JD. We're going to talk about Rate Calculator. Just some basics of Rate Calculator. The OG, which was Max Rate Calculator, is 6 years old, which is pretty old in terms of Factorio mods. Over 100,000 downloads, and it's just basically a mod that lets you know how many items per second your factory is making. You know, if you've got 3 assemblers making iron gears and 2 assemblers making things out of those iron gears, how many per second are you getting of each? And Factorio does not give you those numbers, which I find kind of interesting. So things like Max Rate Calculator are good mods to help you figure that out. JD, what's your experience with these kinds of mods?
It's so when I first started doing content creation, I did all the maths live, and as you may know, live maths is the easiest type of maths to do, especially when you start adding in productivity modules and speed beacons and everything else, and that really twists the numbers. And you're right, Factorio doesn't have any player feedback on what your inputs are per second, your outputs are per second. Also, Factorio special is it calculates everything per second, whereas just about every other game does it per minute. And after my second, third Factorio playthrough, I already knew about Max Rate Calculator, but I started using it live during the playthroughs just to make the maths easier for those that are watching. And I liked Max Rate because it's a you bring it up with a keyboard command or with there's a button somewhere in the tool belt, side belt, whatever they want to call it inside the game, and you then get a box you can draw over 1 machine, 10 machines, whatever it is, and get the inputs and outputs. But you can also drag it over whole areas, like a whole green circuit area, and get your how much copper, how much iron, and therefore how much copper wire you're going to get to feed into your green circuit machines and do multiple steps at once, which is really, really handy. And I liked Max Rate Calculator. No. What were the 2 mods? There's Max Rate Calculator, which was the original, and then Rate Calculator, which is the new one. I don't like the new one.
You don't like the new one? Is it because of the way it looks?
Probably. And I don't need to learn something new because the old one works.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. I actually am with you, and it took me until just the playthrough I'm doing right now in Factorio, I started using the new one. And there are a couple things I still don't love about it, but the nice thing about Rate Calculator, which is by Rygaard, who actually joined the Factorio dev team, and he's one of the better I don't know, one of the better mod makers in the community, partially because of his experience with the GUI stuff, the graphical interface. And that's probably why they, invited him to join the Factorio team. Anyway, his design, I think the visuals sometimes bother me a little bit compared to the old one, but the new one allows you to add and subtract more machines to your selection. So if you have a section of the factory that's making circuits and gears and copper wire and iron sticks and all that, but it's in an L shape, and there's other things kind of in the notch of the L that you didn't want to select, you can select part of it and then shift click and drag the other part, and so you can get just the machines you want. You can even remove machines. So that's pretty cool. And the other thing it can do that Max Rate Calculator couldn't do is you can apply a multiplier. So if you've got, for example, 5 machines running and you see that it's giving you maybe not quite enough, you could double it and see, okay, is that going to be enough? Or maybe I need to multiply by 2.5. And it just kind of allows you to tweak the numbers as you're doing. Because like you said, doing math live happens to be sometimes the worst math that our brains can do. For sure.
I have the advantage because I do a lot of recording for YouTube. I get to watch myself do the live maths, and my rough estimations are fairly close. I think I did one in a video I edited last night, and my rough maths was 400, and the real answer was 440. So I was really close. So I can't complain. It's close enough. And yeah, as somebody who does maths fairly well, even when live, the fact that I can add and remove things from a selection doesn't really matter to me because I'll just do 2 selections, then do the maths in my head to add the 2 together and then go from there.
Totally.
So yeah, it's might be more user friendly, but I don't know. I think it's probably the UI and the extra features that I don't need.
And the nice thing is with Factorio 2.0, actually, I'm trying to remember. Did they tease that? Or was that... No, it's the recipe book thing that they teased, not the rate calculator.
Yep. There's been no announcements for any sort of in-game built-in maths.
I think there's going to be. I bet there will be.
It's what I predicted was that when I did the Friday Facts with Mojo a couple of days ago, I predicted that, yes, this is going to be one of the things they're going to kill off. So far, every single image we've seen of every assembler, foundry, whatever, we haven't seen any calculations built into that GUI. Whether that's because they're hiding it from us or whether because they haven't thought about it yet, I don't know. But I would expect that it's something that they are going to add or should add because it's one of those things that's in every factory game since. The one I
Exactly.
likened it to is Tectonica. When Tectonica launched, they didn't have any of these calculations. They didn't have belt speeds. They didn't, well, the amount of items moved on a belt per minute. They didn't have any of the machine speed calculations written on the machines. Insert a swing speed. None of that was written there. And a lot of people had to do a lot of maths, a lot of guesstimations, a lot of timing to try and work out these numbers and even ask the devs. And the devs gave us answers which were wrong anyway, because even the devs didn't know what speed their inserters spun at. So it's something that they have added in update 1 or update 2. I don't remember. But yeah, it's something that I expect we will add at some stage.
Yeah. Well, and especially given that Ryguard is the one who made Recipe Book, and that's made its way into the base game, I could totally see a rate calculator of some form, especially with how Space Age is going to be way more complicated with 5 planets and all sorts of other things going on. I would be surprised if they didn't add anything. And on the note of new Factorio features, let's dive in real quick before we get to the main topics here. Let's dive into the new Factorio Friday Facts. I know you've already discussed these a little bit. So what did you think about Friday Facts 404, Frustration Not Found?
I think they could have done a whole lot better with a 404 entry, but yes. So the RTS tool is a great idea. It's long overdue. I'm a little bit sad that it says explicitly says Spidertrons, because that means we're not going to get something that's not a Spidertron added to the game.
Well, do we know that, or are they just hiding it? So for those listeners who don't know about this announcement yet, essentially they're adding a little widget to replace the old Spidertron remote that's called the RTS tool, which maybe the name will change, but it essentially allows you to select, kind of like you would in something like Age of Empires, a group of Spidertrons and order them around as a group rather than having to just have, control clicking so a bunch of Spidertrons follow a leader Spidertron, that sort of thing.
Which worked well until the leader Spidertron died, and of course, being that everybody is following him, they're all one step behind, which meant the leading Spidertron was always the first one to die.
Exactly. Yep. And you had to put all the shields on it, and I dealt with this in freight forwarding just very recently. I had to do the same thing, and it really is going to be nice to be able to select a group, and then you can even have multiple groups and save them separately on your hotbar, so you can have Spidertron group 1, 2, and 3, and they're all separate. So that's great.
And funnily enough, the remotes don't have colors on them anymore.
Interesting. I wonder if they're going to add that back in.
I assume so. I'm hoping that if you have a bunch of Spidertrons that all happen to have the same color, they get the same color on the remote. And if you have different random colors, then they just default back to white. But yeah, I hope so, because that just makes it easier to identify if you have 2 packs that are 5 Spidertrons deep.
Right.
So yeah, it's a feature. It's a great feature. The devs have mentioned many times they're all fans of RTSs. They all grew up with the classic RTSs. Your June 2, your Command and Conquer, your Red Alert, your Warcraft 1 and 2, and then so on and so forth. Age of Empires, all of them. But Factorio is not an RTS game.
Right.
Never was.
And I think it's going to be interesting too, because we know they're going to add more enemies of some sort. And so I would imagine we are going to get, I know you said they mentioned Spidertron specifically, which means maybe they're not adding new vehicles or weapons and such, but I think they are going to add more because we're going to get more enemies on the other planets, or at least something, because they mentioned, something dangerous on the volcano planet and things like that. So I think we're going to get more, and I think the RTS controls are going to be important for those other units too.
I think the RTS controls are going to be more important for roaming spiders on different worlds whilst you're off-world.
Also a good point, yeah.
Or building, yeah. I think that's where the main keys come in. So you can not have trying to find the right remote in your inventory for the right set of spiders on the right surface, you end up with a universal remote that you can just use to grab a whole bunch of spiders quickly and easily. Because that's the other thing. Because you're now multi-surface, if you pick a remote that's controlling spiders on a different surface, you're going to have the option to tell them to move to a location on this surface. But the way the game works with multi-surfaces is if you tell them to move to 0, 0 on surface number 2, and they're on surface number 1, they're going to move to 0, 0 on surface number 1, which is a problem.
Right.
Because your surface, 0, 0 on a different surface might be the middle of a new blighter base in the middle of a volcano. You've got no idea.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm glad they're fixing all that stuff, and we'll see what other new features come in alongside it. They mentioned one other thing. This was a fairly small Factorio Friday facts, but they're adding more quality of life features. And the other thing they mentioned is being able to pipette more things. So that's the little tool where you can select an assembler and click, and it'll grab an assembler out of your inventory, or you can mouse over an iron ore patch. And then for me, I rebound it to middle click, but I think Q was the original. And then you click it, and it'll grab a miner for you. And they just added a couple more things where you can pipette over water to get a water pump, which is super nice, or an oil pump if you're on the oil ocean world, Fulgora. And then they also mentioned... Oh, go ahead.
An offshore pump for lava.
Yes, a lava pump
that pumps everything.
Super
the most
exciting.
Indestructible item in the game. Just shove it straight in the lava and away we go.
Exactly. And you can also pipette the recipe inputs and outputs. So like if you have a circuit maker, it needs gears and copper wire, and you can click, your pipette on the copper wire input, and it'll grab a stack of copper out of your inventory. So it makes it even easier to feed things into assemblers and stuff when you're manually doing that.
Yes. Yeah, whereas before you'd open up the assembly, you just control left click on the inventory in a blank space and stuff would just get shoved in, which worked fine unless you were trying to explicitly get rid of one item in your inventory or whatever it happened to be. But being able to pipette on the output is definitely handy. And it does mean that I'm pretty sure my toolbar became useless.
I mean, I still use my hotkeys all the time. I'm a big fan of hotkeys, but yeah, we're definitely not going to need the toolbar quite as often with all these new quality of life features.
As a player, I don't ever use the hotbar anymore. The hotbar is for... It's literally for ghost items. When I'm running around with nothing in my inventory or next to nothing in my inventory, and I'm placing down ghosts and having the base build it. And they're only for rare items, or I custom put something in there because I don't have one, and I want to put down that particular building, and I have no idea where one is on the map to press Q on.
Yeah, that's funny.
For everything.
Makes sense. So, okay, so that's the end of Factorio Friday Facts 404. It was a pretty short one, more like long entry not found, maybe.
Yeah.
But we're going to move into some Captain of Industry stuff. But before we do that, I wanted to kind of ask you a couple questions, JD, because I know you've been streaming games for quite a while and doing content. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? How did you get into this genre of gaming? A little bit about yourself.
I was watching a couple of other content creators and decided I could probably do that. And I was paying for, back in my day, it was YouTube Red, which had a whole lot less X-rated content than I thought it might have. But that's besides the point. I was also desperately poor, and I decided I could probably make a couple of videos per month, at which point YouTube would pay me enough money to pay for YouTube Red. Turns out that's entirely wrong. They will pay you enough money, but you need to get to $100 minimum payout before they pay you, and they're going to still take my money every month for YouTube Red. So that's what started the career. And then since then, it just, I don't know, it went well, I guess. Yeah, it's been 6 years now. Yes, 6 years. 7 years. 7 years, 6 years. I don't know. 2017. So a few years.
Yeah.
And this is my full-time gig. So I do YouTube videos and also stream on the weekends doing stuff like this wonderful podcast. And I play a whole lot of factory-like games. So Works and Resources of the Republic is what I've been playing currently, which we might talk about in a future podcast. Capital Industry, Factorio. I actually started with Oxygen Not Included, of all things, because it came out right when I started making content. And then from there went into Factorio, which I'd already had a few thousand hours in, and things just went well from there. And then since then, I've played just about every factory game you can think of. Obviously Factorio, Satisfactory, Tectonica, which we've already mentioned. I don't know, like every game you can think of that sort of fits in the genre. I've got some hours in currently doing Dyson Sphere.
Yeah, that's awesome. So with you mentioned Oxygen Not Included, which I really love that one too, and I find it interesting because that one is almost like adjacent to the automation factory genre, and I find that a lot of these games have a couple unique pieces that maybe spread outside of the factory genre a little bit. You've got games like Factorio where pretty much every single element of it fits directly in the center of that Factorio idea. But then you've got, other games where some of the elements fit a little bit outside of it. Like with Satisfactory, for example, you've got the exploration and the handcrafted world and the combat, and some of those things feel a little bit factory adjacent. Like they don't have to be in a factory game, but they are, and that makes it a little bit cool and unique. And I don't know, what about the genre do you think is so interesting to you? Like why does this genre of games attract you?
I like games that require me to think. So prior to doing this, I used to play a whole lot of if it had tycoon, sim, or theme in the title, I'd play it. And I found that to be good through my teenage years because I learnt an awful lot about entirely unrelated things. Like I passed business studies in high school because I played, oh gosh, I want to call it, say, Business Tycoon, but it might not have been Business Tycoon. It was some tycoon sim theme game that I played an awful lot, and that caused me to pass business studies. And also, I played a whole lot of RTS, so I want to play games that require me to think. I enjoy a first-person shooter, which is at the bottom of the list of games that require you to think, because there's literally something in front of you and you shoot it. That's pretty much it. But I like games that require me to think. So the factory sim has really, really attracted me because it requires you to think. It's a whole lot of logistics problems. It's a whole lot of also automation problems. So you need to know roughly ratios and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I just really got stuck into this genre.
Yeah, I mean, hearing you talk about that, I couldn't say it better myself. I feel like everything you said lines up. I think I'm a little bit younger than you, but it all lines up exactly with my experience. I grew up loving stuff like SimCity, all the RTS games I could get my hands on, freaking Age of Empires 1, Command and Conquer 1, and its sequels. And I feel like a lot of those of us who are RTS fans kind of naturally progressed into these other strategic areas like city builders. And then when the factory genre sort of became a thing, it was just like, oh yeah, I can't get enough of that because it's everything I want in a game where I get to think, and I get to think about numbers, but it's not just numbers. It's not just math. I get to use the math to help me solve problems. And it's kind of that back and forth of, it's almost like programming where you figure out a solution to a problem and it solves that problem. But then there's a next step of progress where now you have new problems to face and you keep building on it. And it just feels so good to accomplish things.
Except I can't do programming. But yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why I said it's like programming. I can't really do programming either. It's sort of a minor hobby for me, but I know the feeling of programming is kind of similar to the feeling of playing Factorio in terms of the back and forth of, squashing bugs, which is similar to figuring out your bottlenecks in Factorio, and then building a new system and seeing, does it work the way I want it to? Plans never go according to plan, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think it applies as well to programming. It's forethought. So before you design something, thinking about what your solution is going to be and what problems it's gonna give you in the future. Like designing a bus in Factorio and deciding you only need one belt for iron sounds good until you realize what your iron throughput needs to be.
Yep.
And yeah, future planning I think really comes into the factory slash logistics style of games. And yeah, they do spill over into other games that I'm looking at my Steam list that I have a significant amount of hours playtime in, like Oxygen Not Included and City Skylines and Timberborn. Timberborn's another game I really enjoy, even though I tend to lag it out every single time I boot it up. But that's just how I play games until they die, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're all games where you need to consider what you're doing now and how it's going to impact you in the future. So So yeah, these are my types of games.
Yeah, I love it. Me too. That's why you're here. That's why I'm here, and that's why the podcast exists, is because there's a lot of us out there who love these games. So one big thing that's coming down the pipeline is update 2 for Captain of Industry, and
Yep.
I'd love to get your take on some of these things, because Captain of Industry is a little bit of a unique game. It came. I'm trying to think of exactly when it released, but it came after kind of the giants of Factorio and Satisfactory and Dyson Sphere program. Those are kind of the big 3 that hit the market. And I feel like, each one had its own individual pull and reasons that people liked it maybe more than the others. And nobody's wrong for liking any of these. But then Captain of Industry came along and somehow felt like it's a completely different game while still fitting perfectly into the genre. And I really liked the visuals of it immediately. I liked that there were trucks instead of belts. So that's almost the first thing I want to ask you about is what do you find so interesting about Captain of Industry compared to some of the other games?
So Captain Industry is Captain Industry is a factory game, but also adds in some of the city builder elements. So you need to have a certain number of workers to man machines, to man factories, to keep the factories running. You also, on top of that, require not to just Factorio style have the old fashioned miners that just used to sweep the surface and dig up the surface, or you need to actually get excavators to literally rip it out of the ground. So it vastly changed the way that you gather resources. Also, it meant that you, unlike Factorio, Dyson Sphere, and games previous to it, where you basically had unlimited area to build, you're stuck on a tiny little island. And that island has a limited amount of space. Now, as you terraform the island and dig up parts of the island to get the resources, you get a whole lot of waste material, mainly rock, or in the case of the people, they produce trash. And if you put that somewhere, like the sea, you get more surface area to build on. So I'm looking at my stats. I got like 2,000 hours in Captain Ministry.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it seems every single time they bring out an update, I sort of score another 1,000 hours
Yeah,
in a
well,
couple of months.
3,000 hours. Here we go.
Oh, well, we're about to hit update 2, so it probably means 3,000 hours is not that far away from me. But it's definitely different in the fact that they've kept the factory building genre. Well, they've kept close to the factory building genre by having belts that are easy to manipulate. If you look at something like Satisfactory, the belts are easy to manipulate as long as you're running them short distance. As soon as you run them a longer distance, you need to add in supports. The supports need to have something to sit on, and therefore you can't. You're limited in some of your options. The fact that Satisfactory has, I guess it's more 3D. There are more points where you can run belts. You don't have to keep everything in nice 90 degrees. It does give you more flexibility, but with that flexibility comes more problems.
Right.
Also, it keeps the top-down view. The top-down view that is synonymous with Factorio. In fact, it's fully 3D, so you can look at it first person if you want to drop the camera that low. But you're essentially building top-down, which means that you can get an overview of a factory very, very quickly. In Satisfactory, that's just not possible. It's really not possible.
Totally. Yeah, as someone with most of my hours in Factorio, I've got over 2,000 at this point, which is small potatoes compared to a lot of people. But I feel like Captain of Industry really struck me early with it is, like you said, it's a little bit 2D because you still build buildings on the ground and, the trucks are traveling on the ground, but you can build pipes and belts over each other. And there's this 3D element to it. And, you hit on this a little bit, but one of the coolest parts for me is how trucks actually terraform when you're digging up iron, it's literally digging out the mountain of iron. And eventually you've got this like pit in the ground where the iron was. And I think that's so cool. And I've seen pictures online of people, that dig down to the center of the earth basically and have these cool zigzag, paths so the trucks can get down there. And I just think that's so neat because you don't get anything like that in the other factory games.
No.
Yeah.
Captain Industry is very, very different because of the terraforming.
Totally. And the trucks, I feel like, are the other big difference, right? Because most factory games, belts or bots or some form of train tend to be the main ways to transport things. But in Captain of Industry, trucks are the thing that you start with and move things around. And so, how are those different? How does that change the game?
Uh, Trucks are very, very similar to bots. It's like starting the game with bots. You can put down an assembler anywhere, and they'll bring the resources in and out as required, which is very different. But they're also not very efficient because, unlike bots, they don't fly direct line of sight. They need to drive a path, which means you need to make sure that your parts your factory you want to have running with trucks are accessible and haven't been built in, wrapped with belts and pipes and all sorts of things. And on top of that, they're not terribly efficient. They do carry potentially a whole lot of materials, but with bots in like Factorio, if you were only given 50 Logibots, you wouldn't build anything with logistics bots. You'd be building everything with belts. That's essentially what happens in Cabinet Ministry. You have a limited number of trucks because they need to pathfind across the ground. So pathfinding is always, if you've played any sort of game, pathfinding is expensive. Games tend to try to avoid it as much as possible. So there is a limited amount of trucks you can have, whereas belts, there's never a limit. You can just build more and more and more belts.
So eventually you're limited by the number of trucks that you have running around and you have to utilize belts?
It's more efficient to utilize belts straight away. Belts is something you don't upgrade, you don't unlock straight away. You start off with just trucks, and then once you get to construction parts number 1, so you start off construction parts 2. When you start off with construction parts 1, which are bricks or concrete blocks, wood and iron, and that lets you make basic assemblers. And then after you get construction parts number 2, which requires construction parts number 1 and electronic circuits or the equivalent, that lets you unlock construction parts 2, which lets you build your first basic belts. And once you get belts, you can put together a tiny little iron smelter that's actually quite efficient. You still have trucks bringing in the raw resources, so they're still bringing in the coal and the iron ore, but then they're dumping in a bucket, and then from there on, everything's being flowed with belts. And also, they're removing the waste, because that's another thing they have in the game. Any of your smelters are going to create slag, which is just a byproduct, something useless that you get to dump in the sea and make more surface area to build more factory on. Yeah. So it means that people gravitate towards belts very quickly because of the increased efficiency.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Trucks are definitely a limiting factor.
Yeah, and it's cool. I know they don't have roads yet, but they've talked about roads multiple times. I did see, unfortunately, that it won't be one of the things making it into Update 2. However, Update 2 comes out on April 5th, which is only a few days from now. So what is coming in Update 2?
Well, Update 2 is coming with a map editor, which is one of the reasons I'm late, because I was watching the devs live stream how to build maps in the map editor, and they've spent a lot of time and a lot of effort into making the map editor accessible for a normal human being, because previous to that, the maps were basically written in Excel, because a Cabinet Ministry map is nothing but a giant maths formula, which then your CPU calculates and turns a 20 megabyte save into a 1 gigabyte save by running it through a maths formula, which is both cool, interesting, and oh my god, I'm glad I don't do maths anymore. So that's coming. Also, they're changing over the vehicles, so you can now have bog standard vehicles that run on diesel. Also, you have hydrogen access to hydrogen vehicles coming in update number 2, and they're adding vertical belts, which is a long requested feature. I'm still not sure how I feel about it. I don't think every game needs vertical belts, but since Satisfactory, that seems to be the norm for every game.
So is that kind of like the elevator items in Satisfactory where it goes straight up and down in the same kind of grid square?
Yes.
Makes sense. What exactly, so is that mainly just to allow you to move resources over the other belts and to kind of bridge over belts easier? How's that going to help in Captain of Industry? Because I never got far enough, I think, where I can imagine that having been necessary for me to use, because I never got that far.
So if you liken it to something like Satisfactory, which is 3-dimensional, the higher you go up, a belt can only come down at a set angle, call it 45 degrees or whatever it happens to be. So it meant the higher the belts were, the longer footprint you needed to get back down to ground level to feed into a machine.
Right.
With vertical belts, that disappears. It could be 2 tiles, because a vertical belt is not just 1 tile in depth. It's going to be a minimum of 2. So it means that technically all the builds can be a whole lot more compressed. I don't know how I feel about it, because like I said, Satisfactory introduced it, and then every game since then, it seems to become the norm. So Capital Industry is now going to have it. Tectonica has it. A lot of the games that I never thought would need vertical belts now have vertical belts. Capital Industry, it was one tile. So if you're ground level, you could obviously come out of ground level. If you're one tile up, you could come out at 3 level. You need 3 tile width to get back down to ground level. If you're 2 tiles up, you need 5 tiles, and if you're 3 tiles up, you need 9 tiles. 3, 5, 7. I don't know. Maybe it was 7 tiles for 4 tiles up or 3 tiles up, whatever the max height was. So the distance wasn't that large, and there were some ways you could get around it, like twisting the belt halfway down, so you could come out a couple of tiles, then spin back on itself. So there were options to sort of get around those limitations and make the build smaller. But the biggest thing about vertical belts is because you're digging holes into the ground, you have retaining walls. Retaining walls are, a big, thick concrete wall that's about 5 tiles high. And vertical belts means you can get over those. So it does fit the genre well in that circumstance. But I know most people are not going to put their ore drop-offs at the bottom of their iron mine, because if you put them at the bottom of the iron mine, well, the iron mine is never at the bottom. There's always more iron underneath the current iron, which means you're going to constantly be rebuilding it. And I expect most people are going to use them inside their factory and not to bring them over retaining walls. They're just going to leave it as is.
Yeah, these are such interesting topics with game design, because there's a question of, do you want to give the player more control, but also in some ways make the game easier at the same time? And then you also have to factor in, like, well, how do they do it in real life? Is it realism? Is it fun for the player? Is it quality of life for the player? Is it removing a design challenge that's core to part of what makes the game fun? Will it actually make the game worse to add quality of life features? I think these are such interesting trade-offs that all of these devs that are making these games right now have to kind of question, because there are so many quality of life features already in games like Satisfactory or Factorio. And if you count mods into the picture, you could go hog wild with quality of life. And there's a reason why they're not all in base Factorio or base Satisfactory, because if you had too much quality of life for the player, the challenge of the game actually is very small. And
Yes.
And it's interesting because the inserters in Factorio, only inserting straight, I think, is one of the really interesting bits that Factorio has, and obviously there's Bob's adjustable inserters that lets you get around that. And I play with that mod a lot, but a lot of people don't, because they find the spaghetti, or not even spaghetti, but the challenge of making sure that all your inserters fit properly to be one of the challenges that they enjoy in the game, and they don't want to remove that.
I disagree. Having straight inserters is much simpler than having Bob's inserters. As soon as you add Bob's inserters, you can have an inserter, go from straight up to, a 45-degree twist as well, and have an inserter drag between 2 machines that are right beside one another, but the inserter can reach both of them. Very much complicates things as soon as you start having somebody try to optimize something.
Yeah, no, totally. I agree. It actually makes
nothing but inserters.
Yeah, it makes things more complicated, but it also gives you more control. And I think for me, having the more control, because I can handle the complicated, I think having the more control actually simplifies it for me, because I don't have to do as much work to accomplish the same task. But I agree that, like, for a newer player, it would actually be overwhelming and unnecessary complexity that is actually not good for the game.
Yeah. I think stuff like Bob's inserters, it makes the easy parts easier and the more complicated parts harder. But I don't think overall it's not going to add anything to the fundamentals of the game, apart from give people more depth. And it's one of those things that falls into that'd be great for mods. Like, going back to Capital Industry, the game is set to be very, very realistic. A lot of their ratios are built around things that are real life in game. They added in the last update, they upgraded nuclear power in the last update. And when they did that, prior to that, you had nuclear waste that you couldn't get rid of. It just sort of, you had to sit in storage and just sat there forever. They added fast breeding reactors, which is something we have in real life. They're just not commercially viable. But one of the devs I was talking to about the nuclear update, they had to do the background research to sort of find out how it would fit into their game in a realistic way. And that's what they based all their recipes on. It's somewhat realistic. commercially viable is besides the point because you're on your own isolated island. Who cares? But yeah, it's something that they try to keep to. And I'm imagining with hydrogen vehicles, I'm guessing they're going to output water somehow. I don't know. I haven't looked. The update's not out yet, so yeah.
Yeah, we'll find out in a few days. So I assume you're going to be doing some sort of, stream to intro update too. What kind of playthrough are you planning on doing? Are you going to, because I know one other thing they announced is a realism mode and more difficulty options. Are you going to go straight for like the hardest thing? Or are you going to do the average vanilla playthrough? What are you going to do when update 2 comes out?
I've tried hard playthroughs previously, and I find that most people want to play the same map I'm playing on the same difficulty settings or easier. And because of those reasons, and because just playing things at a harder difficulty doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't add anything to most games. It just makes it take longer. And that means it's harder for me to write a story through my playthrough. So like my last map, I was on the crater map, which is unlike every other island in Capital History, where it's all an island with some sort of giant landmass in the middle. That is what you end up digging out and flattening out the area and having a nice flat square island, which is the common final design for islands. This started as the complete inverse. So it was a giant hole in the ground, and then I had to, find a path down to the bottom of the crater so I could then build the island and all the factory and the housing and all that sort of stuff in the crater, and then also fill out the top area so I could put in all the ships and all the docking and all that sort of stuff. But then being I was in a giant hole in the ground, and if you accidentally let the outside water, the seawater, into the inside hole in the ground, the hole that floods, that's exactly how the playthrough went.
Nice.
So yeah, it means that if I play at a harder difficulty, it's harder for me to write a story. And I think it's more important that I get to write a story. I get to have some sort of entertaining end goal that we're aiming towards, rather than crank the difficulty setting to max. And it means rather than me being able to record an episode back to back, I've got to wait 3 years for resources to restockpile, and then I can still record the exact same video. There's just a bigger gap between videos.
Yep.
So no, I'm not going to be playing any harder difficulty, but because they've added a map editor, and I found out just today that you can have things like trash being dumped on the island as a topsoil. I feel like I'm going to have an island that's going to have a lot of trash on it.
Trash island incoming.
See what happens. Yeah. It's going to change things. It's going to be a whole lot more difficult, but we're going to have to see what happens, because one of the things with trash, capital industry based a lot of things on pollution. So if you have trash that's been sitting there for a while, it no longer pollutes because, it's got it's weathered on top. It's stopped off gassing, whatever you want to call it. But if you disturb it, i.e. dig it up and dump it again, it starts creating pollution again, which is going to make a playthrough very interesting, because it means the more digging I do, the worse the pollution is going to get. Now, whether I can overcome that or not, I don't know. What island it is, I don't know. The map editor is coming with the update. I know people are already testing the update and the map editor. So we're going to have to see what somebody comes up with, because if I design a map for myself, I already know as I'm designing it, I'm going to be thinking of what design challenges I'm going to be putting in and my ways to get around those design challenges, which then means I'm ruining that part of that discovery for me.
Exactly. So, it's like trying to design a puzzle that for yourself to solve. It doesn't quite work.
Yeah. I need somebody else to design me a map. So we're going to see what other people come up with.
Yep. One thing that's also coming in the update that I think is interesting, in those difficulty options ideas, they have this realism setting, and I didn't read every single little bit, and like I said, I don't have a ton of experience with the game, but I do know that something people had complained about early on was how easy it was to kind of get into a death cycle where you would start to run out of fuel for your trucks, because unlike bots for Factorio, which just need electricity, you actually need a product of diesel fuel for your trucks, and they would stop when you ran out of fuel. And then eventually, if you get into this cycle, you don't have fuel to put back in the trucks, and now you're literally just stuck and you have to restart the map or whatever. And some players were frustrated by that, so they added in this realism setting where vehicles will only slow down instead of, completely getting stuck when they run out of fuel, or if your cargo ships run out of fuel, they can chug along on Unity, it says, and a couple things like that to prevent these death spirals. I assume you're going to be playing with realism on, though, because that's how the game kind of has been.
So realism normal is on by default previously, and then they have realism plus plus, which is I think that was one of the harder. Yeah, that was one of the harder difficulties. So they normally had things. They had things in sailor, captain, and admiral, and the realism plus plus was part of the admiral difficulty. Well, the belts and storage units requiring power and function and stop working without. I think that was admiral. Quick repair was also admiral. Whereas machines and other maintenance consumers stop working when broken was part of the normal captain difficulty. So I don't know which one I'm going to be picking because I don't. The biggest problem you have, and this is why not many people played at the admiral difficulty, is if the belts always need power if they're moving, and if you get into a situation where the belts stop working, then that might stop feeding your coal into your boiler and your boiler to make steam and your
Yep.
steam to run your steam generators. And yes, you can very quickly not so much get yourself into a death cycle, but get yourself into a situation where you're just not recoverable. There is no quick, easy answer. There is nothing you can do because something out of the blue happened. And that happens sometimes. And there's not a lot you can do about it sometimes.
Right.
Because you just didn't plan far enough ahead. So I honestly don't know. They have added a ore sorting. So previously in the previous, well, when the game first came out, if you were digging iron and it happened to be beside stone, your excavator might find a bit of iron and a bit of stone, and it would load the iron in the iron truck and the stone into a stone truck. But then you'd end up with trucks driving around that are only carrying like one piece of stone or one piece of iron or whatever it happened to be. And they changed that with a previous update so they could now have trucks carry both iron and stone at the same time. And then the trucks magically, when they were just upending the back of it to just tip everything out, they just tapped out the iron in the iron bucket and the stone in the stone bucket. They've actually added an ore sorter into this update. So now you need to dump everything into an ore sorter, which will then sort your iron and your copper and your stone and all those sorts of things. That's been a new addition. That one I'll definitely be playing with. The Realism Plus Plus, I'm not sure.
Yeah, the ore sorting looks really cool. And I remember when I played the first time, it was before they added in the trucks can carry magically two resources and dump exactly the one they want into one building and the other one into the other building. And it was really annoying because, like you said, often trucks would just end up having one stone in it or something, and then they were really inefficient. So I like the ore sorting idea. I think I'll probably play with that setting too. I'm definitely planning on playing update 2. I've got a vacation here in about a week, and when I get back from that, I think I'll probably continue in Pyanodons and fire up some Captain of Industry because this update is looking really juicy. They've added surfaces, which are kind of like, the concrete type thing in Factorio, so you can put art in your factory and put these foundations under your buildings. You can do different colors in different spots. There's still not roads that make the trucks drive faster. Am I understanding that correctly?
Roads did not make it to this update. They were actually custom surfaces are really just decals.
Right.
They do give you a bonus or a reduced cost to maintenance for vehicles driving on them, but vehicles won't explicitly choose to use them like a road surface.
Gotcha. So there's no pathfinding bonus to the roads, but if you cover most of your factory with these surfaces, if you cover most of the factory, it'll reduce the maintenance cost for vehicles.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Do they cost anything? I honestly don't know. I haven't looked. But yes, they were going to add roads. They were going to give trucks a pathfinding bonus to the roads. I'm trying to look for the blog post for the roads. They were going to give trucks a pathfinding bonus for using the roads, and it just hasn't made it into this update. As with every update for the Captain devs, it seems they add an awful lot in every update, so every update gets pushed back a little bit. But in saying that, the game's only been out for 2 years, and they've done a major update every 12 months. So
totally,
I think they're doing all right.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the game even as it came out, even just the first early access build. And I feel like every update, I have kept up with the blog post more or less. And every time they put out a blog post, I'm astounded by how much they're adding with each update. And I really think this game is already pretty amazing. And I think it's just going to get better from here. And that seems to be another thing I've noticed. Most games in this genre, and not every single one, but most games in this genre, at least the bigger ones like Captain of Industry, Satisfactory, Factorio, seem to have really active devs that do a really good job with updates. And I gotta say, in the world of AAA games releasing for $70 with a bunch of DLC already out there and they're completely broken, it's nice to have devs who do a good job for affordable games.
There are still games that released in the genre that unfortunately fall very, very short, and they are going to be the ones you don't hear about because they
Right.
fell so short.
Exactly.
But yes, the quality of games that come out for this genre is always very impressive. You mentioned Satisfactory. Satisfactory, when it first launched, felt like a polished game. Dyson Sphere was another one. Like it went to Kickstarter and then had an alpha like 2 weeks later, and it was out and ready to go, and it looked very, very polished. And then the beta was like a month after that, and then early access was 2 months after that. They went from I think a November Kickstarter to a February launch or something. That was very, very quick. And when Dyson's V came out, it looked very polished. Capital Industry, I had a chance to play the pre-alpha, then the alpha, then the beta, and then finally early access. And the alpha felt alpha. It felt, well, actually, the pre-alpha felt alpha. It felt janky. There were definitely some problems. There were definitely improvements to happen, but it was a functioning game, not a tech demo. And then when the alpha came out, it felt a little bit better. There was a little bit more refinement. Things worked a bit better. There weren't mystery icons left on the map from Unity. That sort of stuff had been fixed. And then the beta came out. It was similar to what came out in early access. It was a very, very polished game. Early access hit, and I was amazed. And all these games that a lot of these games I spent a lot of time on, they come out and they hit early access. And yeah, you're right. It feels like a very polished game, much higher standard than what comes out of a lot of AAA titles. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's nice to be given something as a consumer that you feel like you're getting your money's worth. And I know lots of people have posted on the Factorio forums or the Reddit or whatever, like, oh look, I've now officially paid less than 1 penny per hour of enjoyment or whatever because they've got 3,000 hours or whatever for their $30 game. And I don't know. It's cool to see something different in the industry than just like massive amounts of greed, which I feel like is what we see with a lot of these AAA games, AAA studios, and these are often smaller studios producing higher quality games. I don't even know, why is that possible? Is it just because they don't have the same amount of assets and graphics, or is it just because there's not as many CEOs to overpay, or I don't know what it is, but it's pretty great.
When it comes to game creation, coding is cheap, graphics are expensive.
Yeah.
Or time consuming. So Capital Industry is a 2-man dev team. They've actually increased the team now. There's a community manager and 2 more devs now, but they only do programming. They actually outsource all the art to freelance creators, and that's where they get their art from. Music, the same story. They outsource it. Satisfactory has a much larger dev team, but a significant portion of them do art. So there's 2 or 3 people doing art for every 1 person that's actually doing code. So I think that's where the small teams excel. Like I know, Dyson's is another one. I think there's 1 project manager and 1 coder, and the project manager also does coding, and then 3 people that do art.
Yeah.
And then the Crust, which is actually in Kickstarter right now, I think, and has early access in 3 months, they're guessing.
You said the Crust? I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's I had a chance to play the demo, very, very good. And then they had an updated demo that I skipped. And then yes, they've got it's in Kickstarter now, alpha, beta coming soon, blah, 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 blah. It looks very, very good as well. And again, it's a small dev team. It's like 5 devs.
Cool.
But I don't think they have anybody who does art. So they outsource the art, which means that, yeah, you are probably paying a little bit more for the art than having somebody in-house. But it means that you can hire 5 artists and say, this is what I want, and also go through less revisions, which I think is another time-consuming part that people probably get stuck on. They go through multiple revisions when maybe you didn't need it.
Right.
I also when you're paying somebody, yep.
Oh, there's also an element of with these games, you can get a lot more playtime out of one set of assets. Like, you don't need to have 15 different dungeons and levels and art styles within those dungeons and levels. You don't need to have these billions of different weather effects. Whereas with these other games that are more of a linear, maybe campaign style, you need tons of art to be able to even have the settings for all of these locations. So I feel like the factory genre allows for a lot of gameplay in a smaller sandbox, and that means you don't need as much art in the first place.
Yeah, well, I've been playing Helldivers 2. So Helldivers 2 has procedural maps. So you're not paying somebody to do map generation, but you are paying somebody to make all the art assets that go on the map, and then somebody to code the map to stitch together and not end up with janky terrain. And it's not perfect. There have been situations where the terrain has just been stupid, and somebody has to go along and fix that, obviously, somewhere in the code base. But you compare that to Satisfactory, who's had two people on staff basically since it came to early access, whose only job was to make the map, because Satisfactory's map is handmade. So you're paying one or two people not to make assets for the map, but to actually place the assets where they need to be on the map.
Right.
Add in the extra terrain, add in all that sort of stuff. So I think your games that go with procedural map generation, or in the case of Captain Industry, it had a certain amount of maps that came with it, and then added a map area, which then gives you essentially unlimited maps created by players. You end up with more playtime inside the same sandbox because there is unlimited possibilities. Factorio has procedural map generation. Sure, all the Factorio maps look pretty much the same at one stage. It's either dirt or desert. There's nothing in between, really.
Yep.
But terrain doesn't really matter so much in Factorio compared to games like Captain Industry, where, well, that's where you get the resources from. Terrain really, really matters.
Exactly.
So, I think it's a different approach, and I definitely know anytime you have a dev company that has more coders, less artists, and they outsource it, it tends to have a higher quality product in the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been working for these companies, but yeah, I'm really excited about this upcoming update for Captain of Industry, and I know you are too. So, we're just about running out of time here on the podcast, but I did want to ask one last question to you about Captain of Industry. What would you say has been, because I know like you said, you've played over 2,000 hours. What's been your favorite map? Like, if you were to kind of showcase your final result of one playthrough, like, which one was it if you had to pick one? I know that's a hard question.
It's a really hard question. So there's New Haven, which is the beginner-friendly map, and that's the one I played in the pre-alpha. I haven't played it since. It's pretty much the same or a similar design, so I haven't really dug into that one, but it's the early map. It's meant to be fairly easy. Then there's the beach, which I played in the beta. It's a little bit more challenging, and that's really all I get to add to it. It's a little bit more challenging. There's still plenty of area to build and that sort of stuff. It's not too difficult. There is Curland, which is a very large map, plenty of free flat space for you to build in. The catch is it's very, very large, so you're going to go through a lot of diesel with a lot of trucks driving back and forth because of its size. The first map that I played in early access was the Golden Peak, which unfortunately, even though the devs say it's an intermediate difficulty, they're wrong. It's in the hardest of hardest difficulties. They don't realize this because there's no area to build. And even when you get to areas where you think it's flat, it's not flat. It's ribbed, so you hate yourself.
Oh, it's the almost flat.
It's almost flat. You have to send diggers along to just dig and flatten the whole area because it's all like up and down by half a tile. So it's too much to put a building on because the building's going to plan it's not flat enough, but not enough resources there for a digger to spend a lot of time digging out each tile. So really, really frustrating. And yet, like I said, no area to build. I spent the whole time in that playthrough constantly filling in parts to see to have more area to build in. In fact, my whole town was put on trash.
I was going to say, did that just become Trash Island?
Yeah. There, everybody, you couldn't have a new house unless I had more trash to fill in the sea to put in another house. So that was a really, really interesting map. I played on Insula Mortis, which is a giant skull and crossbones island. And I did that as a live stream over 40 plus streams at like 10 hours each. It was a really, really interesting map. It has a lot of resources, but being it's a skull and crossbones, there's not a lot of surface area, and all the resources are overlapping one another. So you're not going to have any, I'm just digging iron. It's like I'm digging some iron with some limestone. So I need to prioritize getting rid of the limestone from here first so it doesn't back up so I can keep getting iron to keep the factory running to make sure I've got materials that things don't death spiral. Yeah.
Classic.
So it was a very, very interesting map. And that one I made flat and level and square because I could, and that involved an awful lot of trash getting dumped in the sea and paying the pollution cost and the health cost because I wanted to have a flat square island. And then of course I decided to make my life more interesting by setting the resources to 50% above normal, just so I had more of a challenge. And I also dug all the resources out of the ground. I end up with the finished map has a giant 100+ tile ramp of iron in one corner because I had too much iron and nothing to do with it. Also,
That's
there's a pile
awesome.
of copper. And then my last playthrough for the Let's Play on YouTube was the Crater, which also falls in that very, very hard difficulty because, like I said, it's an upside down island.
Mm-hmm.
There is not a lot of resources for you to just dig up irrespectively to get more surface area to build on by dumping the sea. And there's not a lot of flat area to start on either. So each of the maps has their own pros and cons and challenges. And I think that's what it really comes down to for me. I like the different challenges of Captain Industry and the different challenges the different maps can provide. One that I haven't played, but I have seen many people play is the You Shall Not Pass map, which gives you a small starting area and then a giant plateau like 20 or 30 tiles above you. And once you get up to that plateau, life is easy and you have all the space to build. The catch is you need to get up there before you run out of space or resources in the bottom little area. And again, I've seen people that you can get up there fairly quickly with goat pipes, goat belts, those sorts of things, and spend a unity to get them built, which is something that I would definitely do, and I did do in the Crater an awful lot. So I don't see the challenge with that map. It's something that I should play at some stage, and maybe I will. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a favorite map because they're all unique for their own special reasons. So I don't have an answer.
Yeah, well, no, I appreciate the breakdown, and it's cool that really the difference in geography in these maps can create such different experiences. And again, I think that's something that Captain of Industry kind of has a unique pulse on geology, maybe is the word I'm looking for, but both geology and geography of the map has such a huge impact. And that's not really true for most of the other games like Dyson Sphere Program or Factorio. Like you said, they kind of, yeah, they're all different, but they're kind of all the same. And that really isn't true with Captain of Industry. Well, cool. I think we'll start to wrap up here. One thing I wanted to do real quick is shout out a couple of the new Crydania patrons, Rusty and Finn. Thank you guys so much for joining the Patreon. And if you'd like to support this podcast, you can do so over at patreon.com/Krydax. And you'll get some Discord colors and some other cool perks. And apart from that, JD, thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people find you on social media and content services and such?
YouTube, JD Plays, Twitch, JD Plays, Twitter, JD Play 5, because JD Plays is taken by a banned account and Twitter won't release it so I can have it.
Classic.
Facebook, does anybody care? And Reddit, I think, is JD Plays as well. I don't know. I'm not on Reddit. Reddit's a thing. And TikTok's broken on the PC.
There you go.
I can access it on my phone, but
do you have a Patreon?
PC for some reason. I do. Yep, JD Plays.
Awesome. Sounds pretty easy to find you then. So yeah, anyone listening, go check out JD Plays. He's got a lot of awesome stuff, and not just Captain of Industry, though clearly he does have a lot of experience in Captain of Industry. And so please go check him out, give him a follow, give him a like.
And Dyson Sphere series is just about to finish, which was a death world where I wasn't happy with the max settings the game gave me. So I used a few mods to increase the max difficulty from level 30 is the max for hives. It's now level 100. And I'm hoping to hit level 100 before I end the series and fight some level 100 nasty replicators.
Awesome. Yep. I need to check out, man, I'm so behind on all these things. I haven't checked out Dyson Sphere Program since the fog update either, but yeah, that's cool. Any last thoughts, JD, before we close out?
No. I'm looking forward to Captain Industry Update 2. I'm still playing Workers and Resources as well, which maybe we'll have a future podcast and I'll come back and we'll talk about that one because that game is very, very, very unique. And I guess that's about it. And I don't know, maybe I'll be back in the future. We'll just leave it
Yeah,
there.
definitely. We'll have you back on. It's been a blast talking with you, and thanks for coming on. If any of you listeners have questions, ideas for other topics or guests we can have on the show, head over to the Crydania Discord and let us know there. And I'll put a link in the description to that. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you not next week because I will be on vacation, but in 2 weeks we will have another podcast. And always remember, the factory must grow. All right. Thank you so much, JD. That was awesome. I had a lot of fun.
No problem. How long was your recording?
I think it was great. I mean, the audio seemed good. I'll go back and,
How long? How long?
Oh, how long? Sorry. The recording was just over an hour. I think it was an hour and 5 minutes.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah. I think we did good. Yeah, that was fun. I feel like the listeners, I keep saying viewers, but like this is a podcast, so it's more listeners than viewers, but I think they're going to really appreciate your takes.
I like chat. Chat is the universal term.
Yeah. Well, I think chat's really going to love having you on and appreciate your take, and I'm excited to have you on again in the future. I'm sure we'll definitely get you on for workers and resources, because that's one I actually want to hear more about, because I've had it on my wish list for a very long time, but I really don't know much about it. So I'm excited to hear you talk about that at some point.
So, Marta Throne, how many Zachtronic games did Jetty play? Actually, 0. I've never played any of them.
That's crazy.
I know about them, but I've never played one. I think Zachtronic games fall into there's a couple that were sort of mainstream-ish, and there's a couple that are just weird Zachtronic things.
Right. And they're far more puzzly than automation-y.
I think there is an automation one with belts, which I have played for like
so
20
Infinifactory is that one, but it's very much puzzly, but the visuals, it is 3D and there are belts and kind of clippers and stuff. So it feels a bit factory-esque, but it still is a puzzle of figuring out how do I put these pieces together to form the final piece. It's kind of like Opus Magnum, which is the 2D top-down one with chemicals. It's kind of like that, but in 3D, I think.
Yeah, so I've seen Opus Magnum as well, and I'm just like, no. There's been a couple of games like that I've seen, which are very, very much puzzle games, and I'm just like, no.
Yeah, they're fun, but man, they hurt my brain for sure.
So I like that answer when it comes to the Golden Peak. Ribbed for the driver's pleasure. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Golden Peak was a nasty map. Joe, best map was the Deep Dig from the beta. I don't remember the Deep Dig. I don't remember. Joe, what was Deep Dig? Yeah, I don't remember that map at all. There are 2 extra Sonic games that are assembly machining stuff. Space Chem Infantry, Opus Magnum, and there's more overly programming ones.
Exapunks. Yeah. Exapunks was really fun. That was the first Zachtronics game I ever actually beat fully. I've played all of the other ones, well, at least the other 3 that JT just mentioned, but Exapunks was the only one I actually beat. I felt very proud of that. But yeah, it is very programmy for sure.
Infinifactory is in my Steam list, but I haven't played it. I've seen it. I've spent maybe 20 minutes playing it at a friend's place, but that's it. Opus Magnum, that's the one with the balls, isn't it? That you guys spin around?
Yeah. They're kind of like chemical, like old, yeah.
So I wanted to play it. I just never got around to it. I think I requested a key and then didn't hear back. And Space Game I haven't heard. What is Zachtronic? Zachtronic is a developer who made very, very unique games.
Yeah, it started with Space Chem, I think was there was one called Codex of Alchemical Engineering, was like a Flash game that I played way back in the day. I think that was the first one that most people knew about. I think there was technically one before that, but that was one of the bigger ones. And then Space Chem was kind of the first like Steam release, like real game that came out, and that got pretty popular. But yeah, I mean, it is a very different kind of game, and it does break your brain. If you're into puzzle games, though, I'd highly recommend them to anyone listening for sure.
GD's hard players after playing a bunch of class story scale matters. Scale does matter, but the bigger the scale is, the more CPUs you need to run it. And most games are still not as many cores as I'd like. Infinity Miner, which inspired Minecraft IRC. Oh yeah, Infinity Miner was another one.
Oh yeah,
RimWorld is
I forgot about that.
no, RimWorld is a colony builder, same as Oxygen included.
See, well, that's actually a really interesting one. I find Oxygen Not Included to be far more of an automation factory game than RimWorld, even though they.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
And so for me, it's actually on the other end of what I love. I love Oxygen Not Included, and I just can't quite get into RimWorld. It's just enough away from the genre that I can't quite get into it.
Oxygen Not Included is it's a game about logistics and duplicate management, so colony management, but you're managing a bunch of people that are stupid and don't have enough time. So the more automation you can add, therefore the more free time you can free up, or the less thing they have to do, the more efficient things are going to be. So,
and what's really fun about it is you also
manage
manage temperature and like heat capacity and gas densities, and I don't know, there's that super nerdy stuff. I love it. So that's really part of the fun for Oxygen Not Included for me. But
Oxygen Included is secretly a thermodynamics simulator. No, actually, it's not. Thermodynamics are easy and Oni.
I mean, they're easy, but they're still more than most games have, which is 0.
This is true.
Well, JD, I gotta run. But hey, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. Looking forward to having you on in the future again.
Yeah, to cover the other horrible factory game.
Exactly.
Work with the resources. It's a love-hate relationship, mainly hate. A
Awesome.
little bit of love.
Well, I'm excited to hear about it.
All right, man. I will chat to you later.
See you later. All right. Well, I do not have time for any Pyanodons or gaming after this stream, but thank you all for being here. That was a lot of fun. Definitely head over to the Discord and let me know what you guys thought. Any suggestions you have for me or JD would be welcome and appreciated. Constructive criticism and those types of things. And I'll work on getting that edited and published to the podcast world. I think that's about all I have for today. So if you guys want to head over and watch JD, I know he's going to play some more Workers and Resources, so you guys can see what that game's all about if you want. All right, and let's see. Let me just make sure I didn't miss any super important comments. Let's see. I can unpin that message. We talked about UI revisions for... What was that? I don't remember what we were talking about. Oh, Tectonica got the number updates. Yep, Spidertrons. The Factorial RTS stuff is going to be interesting for sure. I do hope they add some more whatchamacallits, vehicles or combat Spidertron-like things. Sviplet map generation is going to be great in Factorio 2.0. I do agree. I still think the maps are all going to still feel the same. I do think the map generation is going to add some new unique challenges, but the challenges that Fulgora adds are going to be pretty much the same for everybody who's playing Factorio 2.0. Whereas in something like, Captain of Industry, the map itself presents a different gameplay challenge depending on what the map looks like. I guess if you tweak certain numbers the right way, some of the new Factorio things might be different enough, but more or less, I think, Factorio 2.0 will present the same challenges to all players, regardless of how their random map generation works. If you make the map 90% water, obviously that'll be different. But yeah, I guess we'll see. They still have 2 more planets to spoil, so we'll see what happens with that. And yeah, thank you, Dave. I will see you all in a couple weeks. And y'all have a great rest of the Easter weekend, if that's something you celebrate, and enjoy your week.